What's up with that?
Okay. It says my channel's not eligible to go live right now. I'll have to debug that later. So now I just have it on straight record, and then I'll have to upload, which will take a million years. But, okay, so talking about the schedule, I had to move some stuff around, and it does have some importance as it relates to completing your semester project. So I think I had the planning and risk analysis material scheduled to deliver next Tuesday, but I've moved that around because we have because if I look at the other material here, UI is going to be a fun day, Agile is a fun day, this other UI lab day is going to be a fun day, as if every day is not a fun day. But planning and risk analysis is like maybe the only day that's traditional lecture style through the end of the semester, and we have a guest speaker coming in on that day. I think they're going to lecture in the morning class. And so I needed to give them one of my topics that they could actually show their teaching. They're interviewing for a job in our department, so they could be a future teacher of you or someone who comes after you. So anyway, so I'm giving them that material, and the only day that it fits, anyway, I have to put it on the 5th. Okay, so planning and risk analysis, why is this important as it relates to your projects? Well, let's look at a few things related to your semester project right now. If I can find the right document. Okay, so first off, let's look at the dates. Milestone 3 is coming up on November 11th, but look, just 5 days later, the paper is due. So really, it's just your last pass before you turn it in. And if I scroll down a little bit, it says, what is Milestone 3? It says review with me, and by me I mean the TAs. So review with the TAs, or me secondarily, just to glance over it for and at that point we'll give you feedback on length, and if you've got all the parts covered, and if there's anything that jumps off the pages is, oh, this is a problem. So the point is, I want to give you, actually you can visit with us as many times as you want to if you're getting it done early. So if you want to bring it by 4 different times and say, how am I looking on this report? Like, I'm happy to have us keep on giving you feedback and telling you what you would need to do to make up in order to get 100% on the project. But oftentimes people just procrastinate till the very end, and sometimes the first submission is really your rough draft, and that's not how you want to get graded. But anyway, that was kind of a joke. I don't know if you caught it. So sometimes people turn in a revised product that's really refined, that's had like 4 revisions, and some people, they're just barely lucky to get it in on the 16th, and that's life. It's all good. Right? I still think you guys are super smart no matter what. But as it relates to this, there's a few sections which are predefined. So if I go down to the sections, it says you're supposed to have a section on background information, which is really just telling us what's the company that you investigated. In some cases we'll know who it is, like Adobe. In other cases we won't have any idea who it is. So this is just to really explain who the company is, how it's structured, what do they do. Next thing is business case, and this is the part that comes from that lecture on planning. So this is where you do your risk analysis or your feasibility. It's really, should we move forward or not with this project is what the writing is about in that area. So that's in the business case area, that part. 2B, doing really good with my outlining. 2C is really what should be 2C is really the most important part of that. Then you have an overview section, a current system analysis section, a new system proposal section, and that's really the bulk of the paper is in those 3 sections. And again, just to give you a little bit of a feel for that, at the end of that document, there are links to a few different samples, so you can see what this might look like if it were your project. So I'm scrolling on through here, and so in this, they did an executive summary, and then they did so in this first area, it's kind of the business background. They show where the business is located, and they do the organizational structure. So again, it's just some background information. Business case, eventually they get into whether you should or shouldn't do it, and that's the content that's going to be presented just a short amount of time before you're turning in your paper. But you could look at this material in the existing projects and completely understand what you're supposed to be doing in there. I just want to let you know you have a little bit shorter runway for that material than would be nice. Okay, then you get to the current system overview. This is really the important parts. So you go through as part of your paper and just show how things are currently structured. So this could be use case diagrams, domain class diagrams, activity diagrams, whatever you think best tells the story. It could be one type of diagram, could be many types of diagrams, whatever you think is most appropriate for telling the story, for how they're doing things currently. I would expect you to do the same thing in the real world, not just put stuff in there just because, but put it there because it best tells the story. So in this case, they had activity diagrams and data flow diagrams, and so they just go on and on and on talking about how it is. And then you have a couple, after you've done that, then you editorialize on it. So you do a couple pages on, here's where I think the problems and challenges are that exist in that system. So you might be just narrowing in on a particular portion of that system you just described, so you do a couple pages on that. And then you go into re-engineering, so new system proposal. So again, using any diagramming techniques you want, you say this is how I think things should be. And so again, whatever you want, data flow diagrams, use case diagrams, class diagrams, whatever you think tells the best story of how it should be. In this one, they also put in, to store their information, their data, they put in an ERD. Potentially you could do a class diagram, I think, just follow the instructions. And then, because, yeah, it goes on, yeah. But you got this, don't worry about it. The good news is you have a whole semester to do this, but when we get to Intex, you get a whole week to do it. Same thing, so, yeah.
Isn't this doing 3 weeks though?
November 11th, or November 16th.
Yeah, so basically 3 weeks.
Yeah, so, and that is one reason why so by design, your homework load in here is lighter between now and when this is due. So this is your new homework. As you work in groups, this is basically your new homework. Because we're charitable like that. And
I love you, Dr. Cummings.
I got your back. Both ways, man. So, so really you've covered all the important stuff before you get to the appendix. In the appendix, you can throw in some screenshots of the existing system. Maybe it's their paper-based stuff, or maybe it's screenshots of their current systems and Access or whatever they're using. So anyway, that's how you finish out the paper. Okay, so I just wanted to make you aware that the content that we're covering for that early section on planning and risk analysis, that comes a little bit later. You'll also, as part of this project, want to do some UI stuff, which is also kind of coming into the last minute there. But all the other stuff you can do, I encourage you to start on it and make as much progress as possible. Do you have any questions related to the project at this time? All right. Yes?
Yeah, so we're actually doing something to benefit the company in some way by improving the process and not just diagramming what we would do.
The spiritual intent of the project is to do something useful.
Okay.
Technically, you could just do a diagramming project to complete the requirements of the course. But what I want you to do is get the connection, like, oh wow, we can do some major project that helps improve them. And typically, these organizations will say, yes, you have laid out an incredible plan for us to do things better. Will you program this? Will you do this for me? And you guys always turn them down. So, which makes me want to make some jokes about dating. But anyway, I'll just stop there. But yeah, they usually are desperate and they're like, yes, please do this for me. And you're like, yeah, I'm busy. I got other stuff going on. I got junior core next semester. Yeah.
Well, have you heard of anybody actually do anything for companies?
No, I have like these like major executives. They're going, yeah, would you please ask that group to do it for me? This was great material. Well, one year, a couple years ago, this guy he owned a whole bunch of medical companies, and he said, I never saw their project. I said, they didn't share it with you? He's like, no. And I'm thinking, that's not fair. You guys took a bunch of time from them, and then you never gave them your project. So I took the project that had been submitted, gave it to him. He's like, this is amazing. Will they do it? And I went back to him. They're like, we're busy. So, so you just break hearts. Thanks a lot, guys.
Just a heads up, people will pay you pretty well to do it, too.
Yeah. I mean, charge anything you want, whatever they're willing to pay. That's the rule of sales. How much is something worth is how much they're willing to pay. So if they ask you how much is it going to cost, you say, how much are you willing to spend for us to build this for you? And if they're like, hey, 30 grand, you're like, done. turn it into your own homegrown, you can even turn it into your homegrown internship for next summer. You just do the project that you spec'd out for somebody already. So, anyway, I don't know, I'm trying to think if there's anything else on my list of items to do here. Today, yes?
Could you upload like a Word version of the project so that we can like copy the format and just kind of like fill it? I'm just trying to like keep the, not like an example.
No, I hear what you're saying. You're saying, wouldn't it be nice if we had a template to get started?
Well, I mean, you like have like, here are the sections that.
Yeah, I know, but you're saying with the formatting, it sure would be nice to make things easier.
I'm just trying to copy it off the PDF and it's just like shredding together.
Oh, yeah.
But if not.
Well, really, there's only a couple heading types. You can just, anyway, there's not that many. So,
Yeah, no, that's okay.
yeah, no, I hear what you're saying, though. If you want to create a template for me, and I'll post it. How much are you willing to pay? Nice. No, yeah, really, though, I think there's just a couple different, yeah, I mean, don't work too hard copying from an existing one. I think you could just, with these headings, it's just a couple different font sizes and bolds. And
Oh, yeah. No, I'm just trying to like give you instructions so I can copy them without it.
oh, yeah.
blushing.
Yeah, it would be nice. If somebody creates one of those and submits it to me, I'll post it for future people. That's what we do. We work together and we make things better every year. So
Is this the format, like double space and everything?
it tells you exact, yeah.
Well, that you use in the real world. This is the real world, I know, but,
You can do however you want for your projects and business. But I'm reminded of something else, which is a lot of people stop right here with the instructions, and it tells you step by step what's supposed to be there. Some people never go on to this next page. So this is like page 10, page 5, 4, 5, and 6. Some people never go on to this next page, which is page 8. This is the rubric. This is not a hidden rubric. This is what the TAs use. The TAs go to your section 1, and it's worth 25 points. Your section 1 gets 25 points if it has all of these features. It gets 12 points if it has these features, and it has 5 points of these features. So if you want to know how to get maximum points on every section, one of the first things they go to is how long is it? If you've got 1 to 2 pages versus 3/4 of a page, is it double spaced or not? Those sorts of things. It's really more about the length more than anything. But anyway, go and look at these things. It's just, did you follow the instructions? And if you followed them really well, then you get full points. So view those. That's probably all you need on that material. So with that, we shall move on. Related to the exam that you just took, hopefully it's already out of your mind because you're working on your next exam. I posted the answers to the multiple choice portion already. So if you have taken it, you're allowed to view the answers. If you have concerns or questions, I have not responded to some of your things that you've sent to me, but if you have concerns or questions about some of the answers, go through the TAs first. For example, one of the problems that has come up is where there's those little fill-in-the-blank portions. People put in something else other than numbers, and so if you do that, then the auto grader is not looking for something other than numbers, and it chokes. But if you did get the right answer, you just put like #12, well, TAs can easily solve that for you. So if you have concerns about something that happened and it's easily resolvable, start with them. If that does not satisfy you, then after you've gone through a round with them, then you can talk to me. But hopefully they can handle any concerns or issues you have. So, starting there. Okay, so in terms of what we have right now, we'll do, so here's what's going to happen. I'm going to talk about, eventually get to the focus of today, which is design patterns. We'll be focusing on the design patterns today and on Thursday. And then in the latter half of today, after talking about some conceptual material, I'm going to give you an assignment that you are to upload into Learning Suite. So every single one of you individually will take your group's creation and you will post it into Learning Suite. So just endure the talking part for a little bit, and then you'll get an activity. Okay, so when we got on to class diagrams and left the analysis portion of the class, potentially I could have shown these several slides, which is this idea that you take your UML diagrams from the analysis phase, so we call those domain class diagrams, or anyway, everything that we had there. And what you do is you revise those and then you add them to other things. So in the next couple of weeks, we'll also work on UI and some content related to that, how to do some good mock-ups. So you package up all of that stuff during the design phase, and then you're ready to go on and build. That being said, let me just give you a little bit of background on something. Some of you may go on to some competitions over the next year, to system analysis and design competitions. There's one in Texas, there's another in Minnesota. I'm not sure which ones we'll be going to at this point. Looks like Texas is leading at this point. But when you go into those competitions, these student competitions, they're going to have you do diagramming projects, given a business problem, and oftentimes they'll tell you two different kinds of diagrams that you can use, and they'll say, don't mix them, use one or the other. So to explain that, what are the diagrams that we've covered in this class so far? What are some of them? One at a time. Okay, so we got sequence,
UML
class, activity,
data flow,
okay, use case. Okay, so these ones we will call our UML diagrams. Oops. And this stuff, they sometimes call it, I can't remember what they even call this stuff, but they'll have you pair DFDs and ERDs. So they'll say either pick from here or from here. And one of the reasons why we have two different categories of these is that if we were to go back about 20, 25 years, we weren't really doing object-oriented programming. We were only doing procedural programming, but we still had system analysis and design. And so these were the methods that we used most commonly for doing system analysis and design. And so depending on which school you're at, you might get only this or only this. I just give you everything and say, hey, choose whatever you want on your projects. But at least in terms of your competitions, you'll have to choose one or the other. Starting, I don't know, 15 to 20 years ago, we started doing diagramming with UML, and this was to coincide with the increased usage of object-oriented programming that we're doing. So your C-sharps and your Javas. So, anyway, just wanted to make mention of that so you have a little bit of context. So assuming you are working in the more object-oriented version of analysis and design, you take those documents, you revise them, you add them to some other stuff that's great, then you're ready to build. Formally, object-oriented design is about taking your analysis documents and turning them into something that you could use for software development. So we're going from the business perspective of things to more of the software design perspective of things. And we've already seen one example of this as we did just full class diagrams with all the attributes and things like that go along with it. Okay. As we go from the analysis phase in our UML documents over to the design phase, here are some things that that we should be doing. Would someone like to read through this really exciting list? Yes, sir, please.
Define objects from a software perspective. Define object attributes, include data types. Define object methods, parameters, paths. Define class relationships, associations, hierarchies. Define class diagram. Define class relationships. Define sequence diagrams. Refine use case diagram and descriptions. No, this is done from a software perspective.
Okay, so refine, refine, refine. All right, now I got another list for you here. As we go from a business perspective of things, maybe we have like a domain class diagram, and we have some stuff out there. We have a report and a user and an accounting system, or we just have a bunch of classes on there that are more conversational, but not really about software itself. As we go to the level of diagramming in UML or software, we're supposed to use good design, and there's a lot of features of good design. It's not good enough to say, yeah, I'm just going to create a cat class and a dog class, and no, a professional thinks deeper than that, and here are some of the rules they think about when they're thinking about writing classes and things like that. Anyway, so would somebody like to read through this list for me? Who's my next victim tier? Yes, Maggie.
Design classes for reuse. A class should describe a single entity. Class should accomplish a single well-defined task cohesively. Classes should be simple. Protect your data, private. Provide access methods, get and set, to all instance variables. Don't make classes too big. All classes should have a single purpose, good union member. Use good classes variable and method names. Maximize encapsulation. Minimize method coupling. Separate the GUI, business logic, and data access into different classes. Use utility classes for common utility methods. Make your classes extensible. Practice code reuse. If good design is an art, how do we learn this skill?
But that's my line at the end. But so as you create classes and design them, even in terms of our UML diagrams, it really is kind of an art. But now this isn't the part that I'm best at explaining. But is there anything on here that you're like, wait a minute, what in the world is that? Okay, go ahead.
The separating GUI, business logic, and data access. I don't even remember what GUI is.
There's two answers. One, there's a guy named Guy in the first section, so it's like right there. That's how we pronounce it, but it's just, yeah, this area right there, the graphical user interface and all that stuff, that's about model view controller, and that's going to be the topic of our conversation next time we meet again. So you don't have to worry about that bullet point today. Other stuff. Yes?
Both like minimize method coupling, and then also class should accomplish a single well-defined class, but task. I thought that like a good class should be able to be reused, so that for me in my head just doesn't quite make sense.
Okay, so one of the things, so you actually just hit on a whole bunch of different questions all at the same time. So let me just talk about a few things. So as it relates to reuse, an example of reuse would be you have hundreds of software developers in your organization. They're all going to be using the same code base. Does it make sense for them to have 25 different versions of the database connection class, which was custom written? So reuse in this sense is, hey, let's just have one person write this, and then everybody else is going to use it. Let's not have 25 versions of that. And so it could be a customer class, could be a lot of different things. Let's not have 25 versions of these, let's have one. So good object-oriented design is reuse from that perspective, but also, you're also thinking about generalization, specialization, hierarchies. Try and create something that descends from other stuff. If it's going to be a video game, rather than coding every single moving character in the screen from scratch, maybe have it descend from something that has common attributes. And so some of that all that kind of plays into reuse. Build on structures. And then you were talking about like coupling and cohesiveness and stuff like that. So some of these are kind of interrelated in the way we think about them. So somebody else, so hopefully this will help as I mention this as well. I think one of the bullet points up here says something about good union member, this one right here. So this kind of relates to some of the other thoughts. So what is it that a union member does? What defines a union member on the job? Like how, in terms of how they approach their work or how they avoid work? So the idea behind a union member is, let's just say that we're at an automotive factory and somebody is a union member related to putting wheels on cars, and somebody is a union member related to, I don't know, sweeping floors and janitorial processes. Well, what happens is when you're a union member, you're not allowed to do the other things. There's strict rules. So if the guy over on the wheel says, hey, janitor, can you come over here and give me a hand? You go, can't do that. Union rules, not allowed to help. I can only do my job. So it's kind of a humorous way to describe classes. you know, your customer class really shouldn't have database functionality in it. Your windowing class, your display class really shouldn't have database functionality in it. So when we talk, so one of the things about good design is we try to keep all the stuff that relates to a particular class isolated to itself. And that relates then about to coupling and things like that. Like, how are they going to relate together? Are they really tightly integrated or not? And we want to keep things as independent as possible in terms of their functionality. Another thing maybe I should say is, for any of these short phrases, you can Google it and there'll be just this awesome paragraph that summarizes it probably better than I do. If you say, what is method coupling in software? What is cohesiveness? What is encapsulation in software? There'll be one paragraph that comes up in Google for any of these, which explains stuff real well. So, I don't see any questions, so I'll just move on to the next thing. Because this really isn't, anyway, the bottom point, the tagline is the important part. Like, how do you learn how to do all of this stuff well? Well, there's kind of two parts to this answer for me. One of them is you divide your programs up into layers. And another thing is we use design patterns. So, so first I'll talk about layers. So this isn't a framework related to layers that I'm expecting you to use. This is just to give an example of the idea. So as we think about building lots of different objects related to a particular application, we might group some of them into something that we would call a web tier. So we might create a package related to views and interfaces. And maybe there's different types of view components, but the classes would all be in one particular category. And then this one is called the application tier. So oftentimes your business logic related to a program is separated from the view logic. And so you can put all of your objects that you're writing into a particular layer or particular package, set of packages. You could also have a data tier. So some of your data might go to databases. Some of it might be coming in and out of services, REST APIs, and stuff like that. So in terms of organizing your application and your solution, one of the ways that we bring some order to the universe is we put things into layers. Okay, but in addition to that, we have something called design patterns. In 1994, there was a book that came out, and it was by the Gang of Four, Gamma, Helms, Lucides, and I can't remember the other name. And this set, okay, so they had three different, okay, hold on. I need to step back here and slow down for a second. Okay, so in 1994, in terms of object-oriented programming, there were certain problems that were coming up over and over again. And when you have certain problems that come up over and over again, you can have certain solutions that are used to solve those problems. So what you see here in red are a list of solutions to particular problems that come up repeatedly in object-oriented programming. With respect to design patterns, and in this first book, there were three categories of design patterns, ways of organizing your objects in ways that solve common problems. One of these is creational patterns. So this is about how do you create an object. And if you're like me, you're like, wait a minute, why is there a discussion here? We use the new keyword, right? Well, sometimes the new keyword in and of itself is not sufficient. Sometimes there are particular types of problems that lend themselves to specialized ways of creating things. So for example, in this list, I see singleton. And it says for a singleton, only one instance of a particular type can exist. At one company I worked with, we used a singleton so that no matter how many times you called the database connection, you only got back that one database instance every time. So I think similarly, printing and stuff like that will make use of the singleton for a creational pattern for objects. Another category here we have is structural patterns. So we were talking earlier about reuse and having hierarchies. So another issue we run into is, how do I organize things into hierarchies and what should be within a particular class? So structure sounds like a building. These are kind of like the building blocks. How do you organize your classes, what's in them, how do you put them in hierarchies? So that's a structural pattern. And then over here, behavioral patterns. With that, think about your sequence diagrams, how they pass messages back and forth. There are situations, there are certain problems that come up that are tricky to solve. And depending on the problem, one of these might be the answer. So one of these right here says observer. And when I think about that one, I think about things like a video game screen. If you have a video game screen, you have a score up there at the top. And imagine that that's an object of some sort. You also have a bunch of little characters moving around on the screen. And there needs to be some relationship that when maybe something blows up, that hopefully the score goes up. But where are the references between those two objects so that one thing can notify the other object? Does the score have a reference to the game icon, or does the game icon have a reference to the score, so that when something changes, that thing gets notified? Those are the type of things that are addressed with how you approach that with a behavioral design pattern. Okay, so those are the names, yes?
Can you go back to structural patterns? What do those do? Like, just what do they do? I got the other two. I don't understand structural patterns.
All right, let's read a definition. Maybe an official definition would be better than mine. Okay, so structural. In structural engineering, in software engineering, structural design patterns are design patterns that ease the design by identifying a simple way to realize relationships between entities. That's as good as we can do for now. And so they have pictures of guns and different types of guns in a hierarchy right over there. One of the things I wanted to show you was that there are different sites where you can find examples of all of these design patterns out here. So this particular link in the slide deck goes to this site called sourcemaking.com. And over on the left-hand side, you see the 3 different types of design patterns there. For any given one, if I were to click on it, so if this one I clicked on adapter, you will see the intent, the problem that this type of design pattern is meant to deal with, gives you some more background information, some intuition behind it, and then they'll give you UML diagrams. So that's stuff that we recently learned. This helps us understand how we think about how we organize code to deal with problems. So again, this is the UML is a language for us to communicate ideas about. I'm going to think if I had... if I click through some of these, and some of them you'll even see sequence diagrams. So you'll see class diagrams and then also sequence diagrams to illustrate the idea that is being conveyed. And then if you go down to the bottom of any of these on this particular website, you will also see code examples. So you can see them in Java, you can see them in PHP, C++, Python, whatever your flavor is, and whatever way you want to look at things, you can use this as a resource to understand any individual design pattern as well. As it relates to design patterns, there are different options for learning design patterns. I've thought a lot about how I should teach this in this particular course, and my goal in this class is just to give you some awareness that this stuff is out there. And you need to do some additional study in addition to the 2 days related to this class to really get your head around this and be good at it. Or if software development's not your thing, then you don't have to go any deeper than this. Just be aware that it's out there. So I think CS340 is the class that's offered here called System Design and Testing. And in that, they just start off with one design pattern after another and build apps. So for them, instead of doing a paper like we do in our class, they do a whole semester on building software with more and more design patterns built into it. So that's kind of what that class is about. So if design patterns are your jam, then go take that class, spend a whole semester working on it. And there's also, you've seen the IS Slack message that says that some of our students are going to do a 1.5 credit class in the winter on design patterns as well. So this is just your intro to it so that you're aware it's out there, but you're not going to gain a specialization in this from this course because we could spend an entire day just on a particular design pattern, and we don't have time to go over all of them. Any other questions you have related to design patterns at this point? We're going to do a different set of material again on Thursday, but any questions at this point? Nope. Okay, So here's what I would like us to do at this point. I would like you, in your groups, to create a lesson around any of these design patterns. So just go through here, pick any of them, and you're not restricted to just this website. You can just Google Singleton. You can Google Abstract Factory. From any sources you want, including this website, I would like you to spend time putting together a presentation. It could be a tutorial in a Word doc. It could be a PowerPoint presentation as if you were going to be the teacher. Learn one of these design patterns and put it into some instructional format and then post it into Learning Suite as an assignment for today. And that's it. Any questions?
Just one per group.
No, I'd like everybody in the group to submit it. That way it's easier for the TAs to grade it. Because otherwise they got to open up one and see who's in the group. And then if they just see the document icon, they just go full points all the way down. And that's easier. Okay, if you're ready, do something cool.